the U.S. bombing of Iran.
Mhm.
And I want to know what your thoughts were about the military mission and now the ceasefire between Israel and Iran.
Well, we don't want a nuclearized Iran, right? That is a full stop. Nobody wants Iran to possess nuclear weapons. And so obviously the president felt like they needed to intervene, that Israel obviously had taken those steps. I'm actually going to get a classified briefing on it tomorrow. So I'll be interested to see what is up with that. But obviously, the men and women of our military executed the mission that the president had for them. Seems like they executed it well. The news reports are that maybe Trump had leaked too much on the front side and it didn't create as much interference in their program as maybe we would have liked. But I'll learn more of those details tomorrow. But thrilled that there's a ceasefire. That's what we want. We want peace in the region. We certainly don't want to have people in harm's way ever. And so we always want efforts to try to stabilize that region. It's a hot mess, and anything we can do to have more peace and stability for the people in that area, I think is great. But at the end of the day, it's in our national interest and in the interest of Israel, and I think the world, for Iran not to be a nuclear power.
And, right now, the world is wondering, what is Iran going to do, right? Because even if there is extensive damage, maybe there it wasn't a totally obliterated the nuclear
Mm-hmm.
program, you know, do you trust Iran going forward not to rebuild?
I think we always have to be suspicious. Their intent, they're a very hostile power to the United States. They're a hostile power to Israel and their right to exist. They have been an enemy of this country for many years. So I don't think we can trust them to do anything at this point.
And yesterday, we're talking on Wednesday, but yesterday there was a vote on a resolution by Congressman Al Green of Houston to impeach the president
Mm-hmm.
over this situation. You were one of five Democrats in Texas to vote to table that.
Right.
Why did you feel that this was not necessary?
Well, we don't have the votes to impeach the president. And so it's just simple as that. Democrats have tried that path. They've sung that song twice now, unsuccessfully, and it just creates diversion from the message that Democrats have that's really permeating through the people of this country. That his economic policies are failing the American people. His foreign policies are making us less safe. His dismantling of USAID and America's role in the world is creating havoc. He's not delivering on lower prices for people. He's creating fear and terror through our immigrant communities. And we don't want to distract from that narrative, especially for a situation where we don't have the votes to prevail. I like to win in politics, and I like to be strategic about efforts that we take. And it makes absolutely no sense to me to try to give Trump this distraction of narrative and news cycle on a motion that we just don't have the votes for.
Does the fact that 79 Democrats voted to impeach the president hurt the party?
Well, everybody has the right to vote their districts, right? My district has sent me to Congress to be effective in this building and to be able to call balls and strikes and make decisions so that we can be positioned in the room, in the tent, in the most effective way possible. All of Democratic leadership voted the same way I did. Over 150 Democrats voted the same way I did. I think the vast majority of the Democratic caucus wants to stay focused on holding Trump accountable for the policies that he's inflicting on the American people, for making life a lot harder, more expensive, and less safe for everyone. And so that's what we need to stay focused on. That's the narrative we need to continue to talk about. And getting distracted on an impeachment quest where we obviously don't have the votes to prevail didn't seem like a prudent thing to do.
One thing you said I just wanted to ask you about again, and that was that the president's foreign policy is making people less safe,
Yeah.
but not in the case of Iran, as we just discussed.
Well, he obviously, I think we need to do everything we can in that specific instance to denuclearize Iran. But, I serve on foreign affairs. I've been party to many, many hearings about the dismantling of USAID. I had a hearing today with Carrie Lake about their destruction of Voice of America, and that's the pathway that we broadcast democratic values through hostile areas through the entire world. And I think there's a lot of things that the Trump administration is doing to obliterate our soft power and our role of influence. And they're giving China a huge opportunity to come in and fill the void. And I think that does make our country less safe.
The U.S. bombing of Iran, your thoughts on military action and now on this ceasefire between Israel and Iran?
Sure. I'll be very careful with my words, if you'll excuse me, because I'm on the House Intelligence Committee and I certainly don't want our adversaries to have any insight into our conversation. I will say this. It's obvious that Iran's nuclear program is a lot worse off today than it was just a few weeks ago. And this is the nation state that's the largest state sponsor of terror in the world. Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis are all funded by directly from Tehran. And also, they're responsible for the death of over 600 U.S. service members in Iraq. So this is a regime that definitely needed to be curtailed, and we don't want to see them go nuclear. I think President Trump took the right action. It was a decisive action. It was a very strong and a targeted surgical blow. And we're going to find out in the future just how effective it was because we're going to see within a year does Iran possess a nuclear weapon in 2 years, in 3 years? And time will definitely tell there. I'm glad that there's now a ceasefire. Iran has been crippled not only in their nuclear capacity, but in their air defense. Israel really was very effective in their attacks. So hopefully this will bring Iran into the fold, and maybe they'll be a little bit better of let's say, less nefarious. We again, time will tell with that as well, but we'll see.
Do you trust Iran not to rebuild its nuclear weapon sites? And what should the U.S. do to make sure that Iran doesn't?
I 100% do not trust the theocratic authoritarian regime in Tehran. Absolutely not. President Reagan said it best when dealing with the Soviets: trust but verify. With Iran, we know we cannot trust them and we couldn't verify. So any agreement that we have moving forward has to be verifiable with the International Atomic Energy Agency to give them that access to ensure that there's not the centrifuges, that there's not enriching uranium to weapons grade, things of that nature. And that's complete, open, and unfettered access. Otherwise, it's not worth the paper that it's written on, any agreement with these folks.
After Israel started its bombing campaign against Iran and before the U.S. military action on Sunday, there was a lot of angst between some in the Republican Party, those who are called or criticized as being isolationists.
Mhm.
What do you make of that split? And did that faction hurt itself given the presumed success of this mission right now?
I think the overwhelming majority of not only the Republican elected officials, but more importantly, our Republican voters across the country are not isolationists. There is certainly a portion of the party, and it's a very loud portion, that is. But I just hearken back to in between World War I and World War II. The United States chose an isolationist path after World War II, and all that got us was a larger, more destructive war in the form of the Second World War. So the world is a much smaller place now. There is a peer adversary in China that's another superpower. So we really can't. It's in the United States' best interest to be engaged on a global scale. Now, certainly that doesn't mean that we're going to be fixing every nation state, and we do have limited resources, so we have to pick our spots. But China's got a Belt and Road Initiative. They've got a lot. They're expanding their tentacles not only in Asia, but they've been very successful over the last 10 or 15 years in Africa. And that's where there's so many natural resources on that continent, and we need to be engaged, or it's going to be not only our security will be at risk, but our economy as well. And that's the lifeblood of the American, really the American system and for our citizens. So we need to be fully engaged. We need to do it smartly. We need to have allies. The fact that President Trump, Jack, went over to Europe and he's got European countries, Western European countries, to commit to 5% of their GDP to be spent on defense is a wild success, considering most of them couldn't commit or follow through on their 2% commitment 15 years ago.
And just on the topic of China, haven't they made inroads in our hemisphere as well,
No
particularly?
doubt. Thank you for pointing that out. Certainly, not only just with the usual suspects with Nicaragua, Cuba, Venezuela, but there are with Panama, other Central American countries. Certainly, they want to meddle in South America. Their goal. Let's be clear. The Chinese Communist Party's goal is to be the world's sole superpower, and then to have every other nation state on the planet to be in some form their vassal. And we're the only country that's a counterweight. And right now, we're still ahead. We still have the largest economy. We still have a more effective and powerful military. And we need to keep it that way. But the only way we're going to do that is to have great economic growth and to celebrate not only our freedoms, but the free markets as well, and building those alliances and building trade, fair trade, as President Trump would say, with other countries.
One other question on this whole Iran situation. 79 Democrats in the House voted this week to impeach President Trump. Your thoughts?
Well, when you do that math, that means that a majority of even the Democrats have some sanity. That would be roughly about 130, give or take, that didn't vote to impeach. That was an absurd vote. It's just throwing slop to the extreme left. When they didn't impeach Joe Biden when he took unilateral actions, they didn't do it with Bill Clinton, and they certainly didn't do it with Barack Obama, who took many unilateral actions. So, by their reckoning, Jack, that the killing of Osama bin Laden would be unconstitutional. They're wrong and they're terribly flawed and it's absurd, but they're just throwing it was unfortunately politics over country in that regard.